this is something I've learned. Building rods, you learn what to do and what not to do. You learn what not to do faster than you learn what to do. Um, First, second, third rod I built, I thought I was, uh, pooping in tall cotton. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to be the next whatever. And then you start casting and go, why are these things so hard to cast? Why is that? Well, I've got this beautifully built rod and it won't cast for the crap. What did I do wrong? You take it apart. I had my spine on the bottom was off, but my tip was on and the middle section was off. So the rod didn't know what to do. It's like, so that's when you learn, your spines have to be aligned. Which way is easier for you to bend? Forwards or backwards? Well, you got to have the rod. You got to have the spine with the eyes.
Welcome to Dead Drifters Society.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. Round 2. Ding, ding, ding.
Round 2.
Leonard Rainwater, welcome to the podcast. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, Andrew. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, just a random update. I've been making bread lately, and I'm proud of that. So I just wanted you to know that.
You know what? I make bread as well.
Really?
Yes, I do. It is something that I got into. I don't know, man. I think we talked about working with your hands, just therapeutic. Bread, pizza dough. What kind of bread do you like making?
Well, so far I'm Hungarian, so I've been making like a Hungarian fried bread, mainly. But today I stepped into making some sandwich bread because we decided that when I say we, it's an interesting thing. When a female says we, it means me.
Yeah.
And then when I say we, it means me. So I don't know why I say we, but yeah, anyways, I've decided to start making some sandwich bread and found a recipe on Instagram. And I was like, well, no time like now. So
there's a book I want you to get. It's called Water, Salt, Flour, Yeast.
Yeah.
By a guy named Ken Forkish.
Okay.
Mind blower. It's
really
awesome. Yeah, I'm really into the Polish, which is a Polish fermented bread.
Okay.
I make I make 2 1-pound boules, and it's awesome. It is so good.
It's
we'll sit down.
I don't know how many like non-preservative containing breads I've really ate throughout my life. I feel like most of the breads have always been from stores that definitely throw preservatives. I mean, I've had like some fancier breads and stuff that maybe don't have it, but there is a certain texture and taste that you just can't beat making it yourself.
It says, eat me in 4 days or I'm going to mold.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and we go through bread, like we like eggs with toast and then kids' lunch. And so we go through bread quickly enough. But I'm not always pleased with the breads we get,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Enough bread talk, though.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I made a pork roast the other day.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah. Little pork roast, sauerkraut, dumplings,
Oh.
The Czechoslovakian side came out in me with a little German.
Nice.
For angry, hungry, thirsty people.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to work at the Keg, and prior to that, I was a cook at Dairy Queen. And so I've spent so much time in kitchens. And when I was, I don't know, maybe 24, 25 was when I stopped working in those types of things. And I decided that I did not like cooking at all. I hated it because I was never cooking for myself. I was always cooking for others. And so I
Yeah,
just like put this weird mindset in my head, and I've broken through it in the last couple of years where I'm like, oh, I don't hate it. I just like I prefer cooking for others. Like I don't want to go sit and make a full meal for myself. Like me and the wife, sure, but just myself, no. I'm
no.
going to go buy something.
Like my wife went to, she jumped on a plane today with the girls, and they went to Disneyland. They
Oh,
flew from Portland. We just got over about 2 days of ice storms, freezing rain and all that. I mean, it just crippled everything.
yeah.
But she jumped on a plane this afternoon, and they went to Anaheim, California, to Disneyland.
Mm.
So you talk about I'm home alone. What'd I do? Went over to the store, got some, yeah, I'm my age, tots and nuggets in the air fryer
There we go.
with you got to have the buffalo wing sauce and some ranch, and life's good.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Air fryers. Shout out air fryers. Those things limitless,
Back in the
really.
kitchen.
Limitless. The only thing I've found that doesn't make amazingly is pierogies. I like tried it a few different times, once not boiling it, once boiling it. It just doesn't do it. But I mean, you can do corn on the cob. You can make like some crazy good um oh geez. Here we're losing words in our brains and nighttime and such. Grilled cheese. There we go.
Oh, there you go. See, we do nachos in ours.
You what?
We do nachos in ours.
I've done it once, and yeah,
You got to put the either tin foil or the parchment paper down, or you're cleaning that thing and
True.
cussing it for open.
yeah.
Fishing. Let's talk about fishing. I mean, geez, we pretty soon if we keep talking like this, Martha Stewart's going to pop in and give you comments.
That reminds me of that one video where she's like, just a couple ounces of vodka, and she was like, glug 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 glug. It's like 5 to 10 ounces of hard bar. Just
Nice.
yeah, yeah, fishing. I've not really been out since last weekend, and it's been a struggle. Not really.
Yeah.
I like going at least once a week, but
You're lucky.
yeah, I steelhead is the time where I've sat down with my wife enough times to be like, hey, I
Listen,
need this. Even when I like don't, a full season of winter steelhead fishing, there's been years where I've gone 4. There's the first year I got 1, and last year I got 6 grabs and 0 landed. So even through all that, for some
he's
reason,
coming back.
yeah, yeah, it's it's
You
addicting.
can freeze your butt off and get one pull. That's all you need. I'm coming back.
Yeah, and it's funny too because even when I first started steelheading, which was not the first thing I did on the river, but in a sense, it was like when I started dumping time into the rivers and stopped going to the lakes. Basically, um, I went 3 months with basically like maybe 3, 4 trout, which at the time was fine because I sucked at fishing. But then when I got that first steelhead, I was like, oh my God,
Mhm.
this is something that
Yeah.
I love. And yeah, now it's like when December comes around, all I think is like, everyone's like, oh, Christmas. I'm like, damn it, I need to get out on the water.
Us, the springers start coming in here really quick. February for us. Springer salmon, steelhead start coming in. So it's going to start kicking off here pretty quick. Bee run's coming up soon. Up the Kalama, the Lewis, the Cowlitz, up the Hoe. All the big boy rivers where you're swinging big flies and big rods. And so we're kind of getting ready for that. Got sports shows starting off here next month in our area down here. So it's going to be a lot of education thrown at a lot of English here pretty soon. So we're just doing our part to get ready.
Yeah.
So I'm ready. Finally, I think when we recorded the first time and it didn't work out well because we had internet issues, and I figured out what it was. It's me. Uh, yeah, I don't have a booster out in my shop because usually I don't take a radio with me. I just got a little AM FM old school. Uh, Heck, I don't even know what brand it is. It's like an Emerson or something you buy. It used to buy at the dime store when I was a kid, and I just listen to football or whatever. But yeah, no, internet's not so much out there. So sorry about that.
Yeah, well, it was funny because like it held strong for like, I don't know, it must have been like 60-70% of our recording, and then that last little bit. I mean, the audio was fine, but trying to do the YouTube thing as well. It obviously we want to try to get that, but yeah, you know, what 103 episodes in, and I don't think anyone's ever thought about it aside from me, how many times I've had to either redo episodes or, spend so much more time trying to edit out, some weird stuff. And
Yeah,
it's a bit of a challenge. But obviously I love it, and I think a handful of people out there love it. So, we
yeah.
put in the effort where it needs. And yeah, I mean, I've never had a bad time, talking fishing with anyone. So even when it doesn't work out, it's like I didn't waste however long we chatted for. It just more information for my brain to, I can't remember anything else around the house, but I can remember our conversations and stuff.
And we have what we call subtle reminders from the ladies of the house,
Hmm.
and he usually starts out with, "Are you kidding me?"
Hmm. Yeah,
Or ends with, "Really?
really.
Come on! I have to tell you this again?"
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Well, shout out
Well,
to those
training.
ladies. We're sorry. We try.
We love them to death. But
Have you ever seen the Red Green Show?
yes, my
Yeah.
dad used to watch it.
Oh, I used to love that show. I was a duct tape fanatic when I was younger. But
Duct
if
tape.
they don't find us pretty, they might as well find us handy, right?
That's right. It's back on down here on the Freebie, which is a part of Amazon.
Okay,
They have the Red Green Show on.
that's awesome, man. That show, I'd watch that show, and why am I just forgetting all things in my brain?
Because you're at that age, my friend. I
Is that
started
what's
it.
going on here? I'm
Yeah,
growing
you're getting old.
Damn, Steve Irwin. That's the guy.
Crocodile Hunter?
Oh, okay, not Steve Irwin. Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. I used to watch him all the time. So I was massively
He's entertaining as all heck, man.
reptiles, and I like duct tape, and I think that's a pretty good childhood. I mean,
Duct tape and red. Yeah.
yeah. I once
Oh,
made
yeah.
out of duct tape because I was like, let's see if we can do this.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny.
It is good. Now my crafts are different. They have consist of expensive feathers and expensive threads and expensive tools to tie them on. And
Well, you can't see them all here. I have three vices on my bench here. This is the makeshift bench.
okay,
Nothing special to look at, so I won't show it to you. But if it's like every other fly tires bench, you should be proud. There is crap all over the place, and it's an organized pile. So
an organized mess. That's what I have going on here. Mind you, it's pretty clean right now because I cleaned up yesterday because it got, there's that breaking point with your fly tying desk.
do you have the little hole right in front of your vise and just everything's piled up around it, and you think that's okay?
Yeah. Like it was getting to the point where every time one tool hit the table, it vanished for at least 3 minutes while looking for it. And then I would be like, oh, there it is. I'd use it, put it down, vanish. And so I was like, all right. But yeah, so I was recording with with Ryan Morgan, and
I don't know. Never met him.
yeah, he's okay. He's not the greatest, but he's not
He's all
bad.
right.
And
He's okay.
he's okay. Well, he
Like those kind of
inspired me to clean my table up because he's like, "Hey man, I just spent this time cleaning up my stuff." And then when we like got on together, he was like, "I can't find anything."
No,
This is
now
too
because it's
clean.
cleaned up.
Stuff is put away properly, and like, how are you supposed to find it in those scenarios? So
Yeah, he and I went and did a tying around Christmas time, and we went to a friend's house, a friend of a friend's house, and excuse my loud stuff there. Um, and and I told him, I said I had to clean my bench off just to get all of my tools together that I thought I might need, and yeah, and I forgot the ones that I did need,
of course,
like hair stackers. I'm like, oh man,
yeah.
so
Trying to stack them by hand.
oh, I just said forget it and just I ended up what I was doing. I was tying what we call a hobo caddis, and what it is it's a coastal deer hair wing instead of elk hair. You know, elk hair goes back.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I don't know if you can't see it.
Go to the other side or the other side. Yeah, there we go.
So it's not. This is just they're your little caddis. You know, so it's not a wing like that. What it is we wrap coastal deer hair and we spin it. Got that idea from Uncle Cheech and kind of took it and ran with it. And I played with threads, but I think the best thread I use is 8/0 uni, olive brown, kind of a brown olive dun. I don't know why I'm attracted to that color, and that's the color I love. I use it for everything, but for spinning deer hair, it bites nice. Ryan about slapped it out of my hands when he saw what I was using because it wasn't Semper Fly, and I pulled out some Semper Fly classic wax in the same color, and everything was okay.
Nice.
So,
just a little tip that someone gave me. I can't remember who gave it, but when you're spinning deer hair, if your thread is able to go flat, if you spin your thread out so it's more flat, it won't cut as easily as it's like I use GSP 100 generally when I'm tying things that I want to, really crank down on. One issue with the GSP 100 is that it cuts through deer hair quite easily. So I'll spin it counterclockwise just to make the flat, and then when I wrap it and cinch down on it, it doesn't cut through it as easily. Just a random tip.
Oh, I'm just taking deer hair and I'm making a dubbing loop out of it, and I'm putting it in the dubbing loop and then spinning it, and it's turning into a hackle.
Oh, okay.
Then you wrap it and pull it back, and what it does is it basically encompasses the last part of my caddis, tie it off, and I trim the bottom flat. So now you've got all this beautiful deer hair stacked backwards with a piece of CDC, two pieces of CDC underneath it. That thing will ride really high in the water and it won't sink because that deer hair is hollow. So you got hollow deer hair with CDC, and I use squirrel. I mixed up my own squirrel dub. And reason why we call it a hobo caddis is because it looks like a traveling sedge, but it's light. It depends on the light it's in. I can tie it with kind of a natural lighter deer hair, or I can tie it with a dark deer hair, coastal deer hair, and it just you can manipulate it by size to make it look like that traveling sedge. Because when that squirrel hair gets wet, it goes really dark. So what I've done with that squirrel hair is I've blended in my I have my dubbing mixer, which is a can of air and a Ziploc bag, and I just shoot the air in there and mix it up, and that way I'm not fraying or chopping fibers because I've already made everything smaller. And I'll put different colors in it to kind of collect light, and it works. there's something about that mix that works. I had to write it down because I knew I wouldn't remember it, and I tie that, and I tie those in a number 10, and I also change everything around with the same idea, but we tie October caddis same way, but in a size 10. And Ryan swings. I tied up about a half dozen of them, and he swings them up on the Lewis, and he says these things are deadly.
Mm.
He catches fish on them. They catch fish. So he's been encouraging me to turn it into umpqua, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that yet.
Yeah.
I'm having fun with it still.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all started with fly tying for me. This whole fly fishing thing. Age 9, started sitting down with my dad. I had a little Stevens. No, it was little Sullivan or Thompson clamp on the table vise. I still have it. Actually, I gave it to Ryan when he started tying.
Oh,
To practice on. And he tied on that for about 3 or 4 months, and then he got into debt with Renzetti.
Yeah.
So
No.
I'm a Regal HMH guy. So
I have the Traveler Renzetti.
yeah.
It was weird. I think one of the bearings inside busted, but for so long it was seized. So I bought the Stonefo, which I'm super happy. I mainly, price point put out of the way, but it's those bases. Like the Traveler Renzetti just got a little base. That thing's massive. You got a big base. Having a nice base or I don't really like clamping them down on the table just because you can't move it, but it is very efficient for holding still.
Yeah.
But when you're tying really intricate things, you don't want your vise to wiggle on you. And then when you're tying big, nasty streamers or whatever, once again, you don't really want your base moving around, your vise moving around. So but yeah, and then one day I decided to manhandle this Renzetti, and I grabbed everything and I just popped it, and then now it swivels again. So it's really stiff, but it also doesn't have that nut that a little handle to tie down. I guess, yeah. So this is going to be my son's first vise. He won't know how lucky he is to have such a good vise to start
But you send it back.
And I thought of that, but I am notoriously bad for ever doing that. I've sent until I made these hats, I never sent anything. Never sent a letter, never sent a package. So the idea at the time of sending something back was mind-boggling. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was, you've never done it. It's just, it doesn't seem as easy. Even doing the hats, by the end of it, I was like, oh, this isn't that complicated. You write down some address, you put it in a box, you ship it off, all good. But yeah, I've been very fortunate that my fly shop, shout out Robinson's Outdoor Store, they take care of me when things need to be repaired or whatever, or warranted. They send it back for me. So, but you know what? This is it's my traveler vise, so it's there to travel. It doesn't need to be perfect. I've seen this one guy. I don't know if you've ever Captain Quinn on YouTube.
No.
And Instagram. He's like a big head guy, and long story short, one of the videos I watched him tie a fly, he had a block of wood, 6x6, just a chunk of it, and he drilled out a hole on the side and stuck an actual vise, vice grips. And so he'd pinch his hook, put it in there, and that's what he was tying on. So it's it
works.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm a little bit better with my money, so I don't buy anything that's flashy right off the bat. I think about it and then go buy it.
No, it's funny. We talk about tools. I bought this Regal because I needed something for dry flies. Um, this is how my brain works. I use my peak for tying midges, small stuff, just because the way it is. I use my Regal, which I absolutely love. My Regal, shout out Regal,
Yeah,
awesome. Not a sponsor of the show, but hey, this is what we're doing.
maybe one.
Maybe one day.
Mhm.
One day. Uh, I love my Regal. I use it for tying like all my mid-sized stuff. But the HMH, this old school 40 something year old HMH, this is the bad boy. Uh, this is what I tie all my big bugs on. And this thing will hold. You can hang a 10-year old child off the end of this thing and it will not release a hook. Yeah, it just I don't know what it is about this. They haven't changed the way they made these things. This was a gift. Mike McCoy used to tie on this for years, and he said, I got too many vices." And I go, "Well, if the HMH needs a home," he goes, "Take it home." I'm like, "Oh,
All right.
bro, hurt my feelings." Yeah, he's tied a lot of Atlantic salmon bugs, a lot of bench showpieces. A couple of them been published. And so this sits here, and I tie big bugs on it once in a while. That's about it. So
Yeah.
I don't have one. You need three. Actually, I have four. I have another one out in the garage I use for something else, but I use it
See,
for
that's
making
kind of why I went
dishes.
for the stone full. Price point's obviously up there. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, my friend Bruce has one.
That this is my favorite part. You
Yeah,
can move the different. You got your dry fly vise that just clips on. It
look at
reminds
that.
me of my drill at work. And then you got the tube fly one, which comes with a bunch of needles that you can put the
That's too
plastic to.
fun.
But that's why I went for this one. Plus the large base. That was for me. Obviously I tie enough flies to justify this kind of purchase. Um, but prior to that, yeah, the Regal, the Traveler, or not the Regal, the Renzetti Traveler, and then before that, it was just a Cabela Special, and
Yeah,
I grinded on that Cabela Special to the point where the threads aren't threads anymore; they're just couplings, I guess.
nice.
Yeah,
What's your thread choice? What do you go for? GSP?
yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, GSP is probably 90% of what I use. I do use the UTC like 70 and 140. But I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to realize that I don't always need to use such a thick thread. So instead of the GSP 100, I'll use like a GSP 50 or something equivalent to that. But yeah, I'm this last or since the steelhead season really started to kind of kick off, especially at the bench, because we start tying the flies a little bit before we go fishing.
Night
Um,
before? Yeah, me
I've
too.
been learning so much tying the classics, and really one of them is like laying down thread properly and like smooth and all that, but then also not always needing like such a thick thread. Um,
No.
Especially for when you're tying in like delicate stuff. So yeah, for a while there, it was like I was always tying streamers and Euro jigs and stuff like that. So I really didn't care if I was using like a really strong thread. And but yeah, we're growing up. We're learning a few things.
Yeah, I'm a big 12 aught, 14 aught, 8 aught. I'll pull out the big dog when I need to, but I have a light touch, and I use 12 aught for everything. Woolly burgers. It's just funny. I don't know what it is. I love the way it lays down.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not a big GSP guy, but hey, it's all right.
yeah. It's it's one of those things that we all learn. from either different people or just bought, fly shops carry different stuff. And at the end of the day, as long as you can get your hackles to stay on and make the fly look good, you
Yeah.
got years to learn and improve
Yeah.
and figure out what you like. But yeah, the GSP to me has been a good one. And I pretty much, unless I'm doing a head now, like finishing off my fly or doing a butt section that I want to be bright, it's basically always GSP, but white. I guess any thread really, but white. And then for a long time, I was just using Sharpie to color things up. But now that we're getting into the hoity-toity classics, I'm buying silk threads that are $10 for one thing. This is Canadian money, so $10 is probably the equivalent of $1
50 cents.
American. Yeah, 50 cents or something.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We don't have taxes for taxes for taxes.
yeah,
We just fund everything else in the world and pay for it.
yeah, they put a tax on the tax that's being taxed,
Right.
and then they
That's right.
tax us for it.
Yeah. It helps with the whole. We can go 75 different directions in this.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk politics, only fishing politics.
that's right.
Yeah.
No, I won't even talk about that because I just get all upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I quit reading Fly Fisherman magazine. I don't know why. One day I got it and I opened it up and I just got upset. I'm like, this is not what it used to be. It went really political, and I'm sorry. I was a 20-year subscriber, and I'm just like, one day I'm like, I'm not enjoying this.
Mm. Yeah. I think one of the big ones for me was like keep fish wet. That movement that started, because prior to that movement and like my knowledge, I didn't really handle fish as amazingly as I can now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's like a big learning curve there, but I really liked it because the keep fish wet was like a pretty positive movement.
Yes,
Most
I
people
agree.
were, I mean, I posted once a photo of me holding a steelhead with one wool glove on. I couldn't get it off. It was pouring rain. It was blah blah blah. Excuses aside, yeah, I got chewed out really well for it. And so I, instead of just like, bantering back and forth with the people on Instagram, I also looked through their feeds and realized that they were holding fish like in what my perspective wasn't the greatest either. So I just went to research and read a lot about handling trout mainly and salmon, um, and and then I just started implementing those things that I learned. And so now if I see someone's kind of mishandling, I'll just private message them and like, hey man, like awesome catch, or I'll leave it alone. One or the other. Really depends on the scenario. But, you know, now younger kids and that are getting into fly fishing, they see this like keep fish wet thing. So there's like a lot stronger movement towards, just them wanting to do these proper etiquettes with fish handling. So yeah, I like that one. But politics, yeah, I don't really go on Facebook for that reason. That maybe it's not so much now, but when I was in it, I like Instagram because people are pretty damn positive, and I guess I also surround myself with,
Yeah,
people like
it's the
you.
company you keep, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got my horse blinders on these days. I focus on the good and positive, and it seems to work. I mean, we could always look for the negatives, but yeah, yeah. I have a huge box full of magazines, old magazines, fly tying magazines and stuff, and I breeze through them. There's some cool articles. The history is always a cool one to kind of go over.
I like that's kind of what inspired my style and when I of broad building is I remember being a little kid, and my dad was a fly fisherman. He was a good fly tyer. He was very creative and crafty. A horrible caster. Oh god, his cast. and he never caught fish. But I'm like, Dad, you don't catch fish. He goes, I don't care. He goes, I'm outside. I don't care. So, and fishing with him, you learn to appreciate everything. He had his first fly rod he bought for himself was an old Lama Glass G1000 back from the 80s. And I have it. I mean, he passed away 9 years ago. And I have that rod. And it kind of is, seeing that rod as a kid and then as an adult, it kind of sparked something. I was trying to be like everybody else with my rod building, trying to match and be like the R.O. Winstons and the Sages, and at the time, Diamondback was a pretty good rod company. There was another one, Fisher, out of Carson City, Nevada. He was pretty good. They're a really good company, but when he passed away, they closed up shop. But what inspired me is those classic looks, and just not minimalist, but classy, but sexy, but functional. And I think that's, you have one of my rods. They're nothing special, but they perform well.
Sure, I think it's a special rod of mine. It's up on my top two favorite rods. So
Yeah, it's
toot your own horn, but it's a nice rod.
yeah. I thank you. It I believe using good components, good craftsmanship, good blanks, and build them right, and that'll be a rod you pass down.
Yeah,
That's my theory.
yeah. If you can pry it out of my cold dead hands, no.
Yeah.
I'm getting buried with that rod, cremated, whatever towards. All my rods. No one's taking these from me.
Yeah, I think when I go, my wife's going to make the hole a little bit bigger to put all the ones. Mine too. She asked me, she goes, "Do you need another?" She goes, "What are you doing?" Like, "I'm building a rod." "For who?" "Me." "You don't need another one." My wife sews. So she goes and buys fabric and all this other stuff. And I go, "Do we need to go through your little craft area?" So that's kind of our joke.
Yeah.
But, it's all good. So,
Yeah.
hey, I want to show you something. I want to show you something.
Yes.
So this, I'm about to do a little light here.
There we go.
A little Buckeye burl for you.
Oh,
Isn't that beautiful?
yeah.
And it's got eyes in it and everything. It's pretty cool. So we just did this between the first one that we filmed or we recorded and yesterday.
Okay.
So I put the tendon in this a couple days ago, but yeah, this is gonna go. I have this one and a couple others for a show. Oh, there we go. For a show that I'm doing in.
It back a little bit further. Yeah, there we go.
Here, how's that?
That is good.
So for a show in March, and we're going to have booth number 6 at the big shout out here at the Northwest Fly Tires and Fly Fishing Exposition in Albany, Oregon, March 8th and 9th. So I'll have 12 rods on display, and we're kind of digging deep here. I'm building a trout switch. Nice little 10 foot 6 4-weight, and that's a Talon blank. The mandrels were made back in the 80s, and the company that brought them out basically revised that whole revised the rod line, and I'm going to fix my light here. There we go. Revised the rod line and modernized the materials. And these rods are they're amazing. You have one of the old. You have. That's what yours is a Talon, and it just, I believe it lightened the sensitivity on them. Actually, they're a little bit lighter than the one you have now.
Mm.
and by maybe an ounce. So yours is about 4.5 because it's a big rod. And but yeah, the 9'6" 5 weight that I have, I just got them last week Thursday. They're going to be a cannon. They're going to throw some lines seriously.
Mm.
And the 10'6" 4 weights are going to be really nice too.
Yeah. That's exciting, man. I so when you say switch, you're talking like a bit of a two-handed rod as well.
It is going to be a two-handed rod.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, trout space the thing I'm also going to get on this year. That's a big plan for my my thought process is if I can get pretty good at trout spay too, then I can do a bit of trout spay guiding, which no one's really doing right now, which would be cool. We've talked about it a few times and amongst the guiding crew, and I I love casting a single hand. Um, but a lot of areas where we are, unless you're on a raft,
Hmm.
can't. And then I love swinging flies. I love, casting a spay rod. That to me is like, I get sad that I can't do it all year round, but that's not true. It's just I wasn't doing it all year round. So,
Right.
yeah, definitely getting into the trout spay this year because I think that's a really cool way of doing it. And, everyone gets to the point eventually where I guess like your dad where he didn't even care if he caught a fish, he just wanted to be outside.
Hmm.
As long as I can cast, I'm pretty happy. And then if I'm casting spay, I'm slightly happier. Something about it, it's the rhythm, the way it clears my mind. All I'm thinking about is the cast. Single hand, obviously we're still in that realm, but
Yeah.
spay casting I get a little bit more in that zone. um yeah, it's it's a fun one. It takes time to learn. It's not like you just pick up the rod and you go and you're casting,
Right.
for distance. But yeah, dry fly, trout spay is a thing for me this year. That's going to be definitely when I go up to Cranbrook and I got a couple days off. It'll be streamers for bull trout, and then trout spay for dry flies. And I'm just going to do that. And then when I get back, it's a little bit of Euro until steelhead season, and then it's back to swinging flies and then
Back to swinging meat.
swinging the meat. And yeah, it's cool though. Fly fishing, you can just immerse yourself in so many different avenues. Wherever
Mhm.
you are in the world, there's something you can do. And if it's a fish, heck, I've caught a seagull on a fly by accident. Well, not by accident. I guess the bird didn't do it by accident. I wasn't expecting it to really happen, but you know, as long as it's out there, you can catch something. So yeah.
I hooked a mud hen once,
Yeah.
and I wasn't trying.
Yeah. I've had eagles take my fish.
I've been spooked a couple times.
Yeah. You don't
How
expect
big
it,
of
and all of a sudden this like freaking massive birds just right there
you
grabbing
know how big an eagle's butthole is?
it's large.
When it's 10 feet from you, it's that big around.
Oh man. That's funny. Yeah, I guess so. And perspective. All in perspective, right?
It's all in perspective. I hooked into this fish. I was up at Coldwater Lake, and there's a little piece of what was left of the creek. It's this big mound of dirt with a tree on it. And usually in about early summer, there's an eagle that sits up in the top of the tree, and that eagle just kind of basically scans the area for um, excuse me, and it sends if you hook a fish and it splashes, you see him hop off the tree, and then he starts flying around. And next thing you know, you've got an eagle over your shoulder watching you reel in this fish, and he's just doing the eagle thing, and then he'll swoop it.
Yeah.
never been that close to a bird to where you can hear the wind going through their
Yeah.
over their wings. It's like, wow, that thing's huge.
Yeah. There's a little lake kind of close to my house. It's called the Rance Lake. And that's where I spent a lot of time when I first was starting fly fishing. It's a nice small lake. You're pretty much guaranteed to catch a fish if you had your fly in the water.
Right.
And yeah, I learned very quickly that when you'd see like you knew there was eagles around because they're always there all year round. And so the second you'd hook a fish and you get it close to the surface, you just like look around and you'll see them coming in.
Yep.
And so right before they come, I would just drop my rod, or not drop it, but like lower my rod tip,
Yep.
let the fish get deeper. Eagle flies away, quickly pull it up, net it. But if you're not on your game with that,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you have a lost fly, you need to retie and get back in the water. So,
Or you have an eagle that swoops something up and the hook's still in the fish and your fish is flying off.
yeah, I've had a few of those where it's like, do I try to fight this eagle right now? This, yeah, hook set, fast style, really tricky.
45 degrees.
Your rod, the one that you sent me, that one could probably pull them in, but
I don't think so.
yeah, they're pretty. I was. That's one thing that like when it hooked and I was like holding it and like drags just going nuts. I was like, I don't even know if this bird knows that I'm like connected to it. Probably thinks there's just a bit of a draft around or something.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. About the wood that you use for the reel seats. What are the
Yeah.
main woods that you use?
Main woods that I use are big leaf maple. And what we do is we look for trees that are not diseased but sick. What we mean by sick is everything up here has a layer of moss because just like up by you, it rains a lot here. So we get about 40, 45 inches of rain here in Southwest Washington a year. That's the average. So sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. And so we look for the big moss pads and we kind of peel it back on some trees that look like they they've been hit by the beetles. So we look for, and what that does is that keys the tree to put up a defense. And we can also peel back the moss and look for a white powder. It's called a cream spalt, and that means the tree has a fungus in it. So that's for the maple. And what we're looking for is we're looking for a burl, a big growth on the outside of the tree, and we're looking for that spalt. So when we cut it, you get the little lines. You'll see there's a little black line like right here.
Yeah.
You'll see a little black lines, and what that is that's the tree's natural defense to keep the fungus from attacking the wood. And what that does is that puts a pattern in the wood that we want. And we've learned to cut our wood a certain way to where we enhance that. That's the big leaf maple. Another tree that we use here is alder. We have a lot of alders here. And when an alder will fall, uh, we'll watch that tree and we'll cut the end off of it. And it's not the root end because sometimes there's a little bit of life left in there. And what we want is we want that tree to kind of be alive a little bit. And what it'll do is it'll make a natural defense inside the wood again with the black line, and that's called spalting as well. It's a fungus that attacks the tree. So we want the tree to naturally spalt. And so after about probably 4 months, we'll go to the alders, and if you see a little black line in the cross section of the tree, and then we'll cut it, and we cut it in a cross section, so it looks like basically a bug pattern. It's kind of cool. And another favorite of mine is the Buckeye burl, spalted Buckeye burl. This wood comes out of California, and it's getting harder and harder to find because the regulations for harvesting wood in California is becoming near. It makes it difficult to where people are like, it's not even worth it anymore.
Mm.
So what we find, we get, and we hold on to it dearly for special projects. But I tell you what, man, this Buckeye burl, one of my favorites. And so yeah, I use the Buckeye, the maple, and the alder.
And
And we
then
do different things with it. We'll dye it. Um, we'll dye it. We'll do fun things with it, and it looks cool when it's when we're done with it.
yeah, I don't think I ever realized, I guess until I got my Berkheimer, how nice it is to have a nice reel seat. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, it's not a necessity. If you just have like a standard black, reel seat, you can still catch fish.
Yeah, but from a builder's point of view, I'm going to put the money thing on it.
Yeah.
My goal is to say you call me and say, I want you to build me a rod, and this is what I want. Okay, what kind of insert do you want? Well, I don't really care. Yeah, you do. You don't realize it, but you do.
100%.
Because when you're walking through that rack of rods at the fly shop, and I want you to do this for me, I want you to walk through a rack of rods and say, all right, this is what I have at home. What's going to make me here pull out my credit card and lay down some hard earned money? I want that rod to say, take me home.
Yeah.
And I think a nice piece of wood, good looking hardware, good finish, good thread good thread wraps, nice color, nothing bright and gaudy, but just something just subtle and sweet. We
Yeah.
call it subtle but sexy. And it's something you'll take home and be the envy of fish camp or with your buddies or whatever. And hey, they'll ask, where'd you get that? Oh, I ordered from a guy down in the States. And then you send them my way.
Yeah. 100%, man. It's like you just nailed it on that. The Like I got, I like Echo as a rod brand for especially my client rods.
Mhm.
Because it's very inexpensive for warranting tips, or I could just buy new tips and stuff. But then for my nicer rods that are just for me to be using, um, yeah, having something that stands out, and you know, it's like getting a haircut, or putting on a nice suit or something. You just makes you feel good, you know.
Mhm.
It Yeah, there's a lot of little levels to it when it comes down to it, but I now have such an appreciation for a nice real seat that I just never knew was
No, it's
a
gorgeous.
thing. You'd be proud of my son. Today we went to the fly shop to spend more hard-earned money on threads, like I said, and some other feathers and whatnot. And he was like, well, we were walking to the store. He's like, Dad, you need a new rod. It's like, oh yeah. And
You need
he's
to go
like,
tell your mom
yeah,
that.
he's like, we're going to look at a rod today. I was like, all right, man. So we go into the shop, and he's running around doing his thing, and he's like, Dad, I found the rod for you, and walks me over to some Berkheimer rods, and he's like, that one right there. I looked at it and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be the rod if I was walking out with a rod today. But
Well, let me guess. It was a 13-foot two hand.
um, yeah, it's almost like me. It was,
No.
yeah, man. It was a nice rod, and but he has very expensive taste. That little one. I guess it's my fault because I have expensive taste when it comes to my fly fishing gear. Which if you fly fish once a year, maybe you don't need if you have the money, but if you don't really need the top of the line and everything. But if you're like me, or go out enough or it's like a lifelong passion, then having that top line gear, I mean, can't stress it enough. I was talking with Ryan about like a dry bag, having a good dry bag. Or if you're in the bush, whether you're fishing, hunting, or hiking, having the right gear makes those wet days or cold days
Hmm.
dramatically better. So yeah, for me, a good dry bag, that's very important. Having, a nice rod, definitely. It doesn't make you necessarily cast better right off the bat, um, but it will help a little bit.
Yep.
And then, maybe bigger fish, I would never cheap out on a reel, but if it's like just for, your average size trout, then a reel I could, cheap out on a little bit or go less expensive. But then line, I'll
No,
never cheap out on line. That's
no.
one thing, if it's, $160 versus $100, I'm getting the $160 one.
Yeah, I'm a SA MPX guy.
Yep.
Uh, Andro, I like my Andro line,
Have you
and
tried that Infinity line by SA?
I think I have. Yes.
That is my favorite dry fly line. It can toss dry flies and just drop them down so gently. And then with my 4 weight, I was casting mini sex dungeons, no problem with a 4 weight. Just you know, it's such a nice line. I'm sure they'll come out with something else. And obviously, I haven't tried every line out there, but
Sure.
yeah, big fan of the Infinity line. I like the textured one. It's I think like $10-$20 more,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
I
the
like
MPX is textured.
texture. Like my fingers, are men that use hands,
Hmm.
and so having some kind of feel and even that sound. When I start to hear it in my guides, I know I'm ready to cast. That feel, it all kind of comes together. So yeah, I mean, when I first started fly fishing, everything I bought was off recommendations of others, and sometimes they weren't even, like the one shop I used to go to, they set me up with, yeah, it was a sage rod, which I still have it. It's broken, but should send it in as well. I've already sent it in though. I sent it in, got it back a year later,
Hmm.
and then went out to fish and like a really nice brown broke it in half, and I was like,
I'm done.
yeah, I don't
I'm
care.
done.
I don't even use my sages anymore. They're my backup rods, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
I give my sages to. I gave one away not long ago to a friend of mine. I was like, here, and he was like, whoa, like, isn't this an expensive rod? And I was like, yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
I was like, if you break it, that's that. He's like, oh,
Right.
okay. I
The
would
only
never.
sage I have one sage. I have two sages,
Okay.
and I don't fish them.
Yeah.
One is an RPL Plus 4 weight, and I don't fish it because you can't get them anymore.
Yeah.
And when you do get them, and you have to when you send them back to Sage, it is you experience this. They only make two. They only make two products out of Bainbridge Island anymore, and the rest is all brought in from overseas.
Yeah.
And they have to whip out the mandrels. They have to fire up the ovens. It's a process. They have to make that one part, and they're not in a big hurry to do it because they have to break down a production run to do it.
Yeah.
So I've learned through the hard way buying blanks from Patriot Factory up here in Woodland, Washington, that I buy 12 plus extra tips because a customer will break one, and that way I don't have to bother anybody to break a rundown. I just buy smart, and yeah. So if you break a rod, I'll replace it. I have no problem with that because I break things all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a klutz.
Hey man, and rods, they're so strong until they're not. I guess that's like anything, but I've landed steelhead on, a handful of those rods up there, and then, or salmon or whatever. And a simple branch has broken rods in half. Trying to,
Mhm.
lifting a rod or a branch out of the water because I think the rod can handle it. Rod
They're
breaks.
not made to do that.
Not made to do that. They're
Not
not
made to
a
go.
mesh rod.
They're not made to go straight up and then you go like this.
No.
When you see people do that, it drives me nuts, and I'm probably going to catch crap for it, and you probably will too. But
Yep.
when I see people in pictures and they have their arms straight up in the air and they're stripping in a fish, I want to just reach up and slap them in the back of the head and say, 45 degrees, arm out.
Yeah.
Use the taper of that rod. Or when you see people grab their rods, and they hold it like this,
Oh my God.
don't do that either, because you're going to break that rod.
Yeah. I watched
And
a video not long ago of this girl on Instagram. It was just a spin caster rod, so we're okay, guys. We're okay. But
yeah,
she hooked into a nice fish, and then she was bringing it in and then grabbed the rod, and it just snapped right where her hand touched. And, in the comments, it was brutal, kind of, to be honest. But, rod mechanics, that was a big thing actually for learning how to cast a rod properly, to the extent that, I'm no master by any means, but
no,
I can do things. Understanding rod mechanics, and I actually heard it, I wish I knew which episode, but it was on the Wet Fly Swung podcast, and it the gentleman was talking about rod mechanics and how, your rod always wants to be that round shape, straight pointed up, and
right.
so when it bends, it goes into an oval shape, which is
Mhm.
then where the energy is created and stored, and then it wants to automatically snap back up to that round shape that it is. um, so that little bit of knowledge um, really did help understand rod mechanics, and then realizing that, especially when you first start and you don't have a ton of guidance, you think, and you probably have casted, power bait or something like a big lure. So you're
Mhm.
used to putting the lure behind you, tossing it out, and that's
You're
loading
putting
the rod.
load in the rod. Yeah.
Yeah. So learning how the road, I said, how
Mhm.
the rod gets loaded and how it transfers the inertia that's created there, um, was a big step to actually, like, I learned that. I spent some time casting, and I got better,
Mhm.
dramatically better within that, basically a year.
Mhm.
And now, you know, casting is no issue in terms of, I can do it all day long. Mind you, I'm not casting 10 weights or 14 weight rods, but, my 8 weights, single hand, two-handed, all that. I'm now focusing more on, yeah, obviously line placement if it's a two-handed rod, and or if I have back cast room, but I now know what the rod or needs to do to make things happen.
Mhm.
And so if I can just pay attention to what I'm doing and realize, like, oh, I didn't actually let the rod load there. I was too fast, I was too slow, and then you start to build these little tips in your head. And another thing was just being able to point out what you're doing wrong.
Yep.
If you can have someone either watch you and be like, "Hey, you did this or that," or, I've talked to
I
people where
filmed
they're
myself.
like, "I just filmed myself casting."
Yep.
And then I like what um, sports players do is rewatch their games and learn from their mistakes. So same thing, if you can't cast, lessons, I would dramatically say that's your first step. But if you're really not wanting to go towards lessons, then it's like, learn what is a mistake, how to correct it, and then still fish that cast if you're fishing.
Let's take it a step further. So you talk about rod mechanics, rod. I look at parabolics. I look at energy. We look at kinetic versus potential energy. We look at, like I said, parabolics and friction. Or friction's the nice.
Oh, sorry, you saw that
Yeah.
nipple?
Hey, man, it's okay.
It's hot down here.
I like bologna. Anyway,
I've shed it off like 3 layers. I won't go any further though. You're not getting
thank
any
you.
show tonight, sir.
It's all right, man. I don't wear pants either.
I know the wife's been gone for a few hours, but we're not taking it a step further.
I'll snuggle with the dog tonight. It's
There
okay.
you go.
Little 14-pound terrier. He's my partner. Anyway, no, but this is something I've learned. Building rods, you learn what to do and what not to do. You learn what not to do faster than you learn what to do. First, second, third rod I built, I thought I was, pooping in tall cotton. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to be the next whatever. And then you start casting and go, why are these things so hard to cast? Why is that? Well, I've got this beautifully built rod and it won't cast for the crap. What did I do wrong? You take it apart. I had my spine on the bottom was off, but my tip was on and the middle section was off. So the rod didn't know what to do. It's like, so that's when you learn, your spines have to be aligned. Which way is easier for you to bend? Forwards or backwards? Well, you got to have the spine with the eyes, right? 180 degrees below the eyes. So, because it's easier for you to bend forward, right? With your spine. So, and then I learned that maybe I'll add an couple extra guides. Why is that? I'm going to reduce the friction because that's how everything works. Line rubs against your eyes, creates friction, especially dry when you're practicing. And it's one of those things I developed over the years and finally perfected it to where you're using all that energy in the rod, but I'm not having to expel more energy to make that rod work. I'm making the rod do all the work. By adding extra guides, I've reduced that friction. So when you come up with that haul stroke and you bring it forward, you're pushing. You're not ripping it forward like you see a lot of these guys. You can just hear everything creaking and cracking and making noise. It's like they're not made to make that noise. Why is that doing that? Well, they put so much force and energy into that, and they bring it forward and they try to cast. They're casting a whole all 80 feet all at one shot. It'll do it, but it doesn't like it. That's where you get failures. That's where you get micro cracking. So I'm not saying be gentle with them, use them. But you talk about mechanics and pressure. They're not made to go up. They're made to be held like this. And when you're playing that fish, don't go up with it because now what you've done is taken all that pressure and put it towards the tip. And that tip by itself can only hold 2 pounds.
Yeah.
2 pounds of pressure. 2 pounds of pressure, you can break 14-aught Vivas, takes more than that.
Yeah.
It takes less than 2 pounds to break. So think about 2 pounds of pressure, and this fish is doing a tap dance at the end of your line, and he's about maybe a pound, but he's tugging, and you're going up and creating more. And what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to break your tip. And a lot of new fly fishermen, and even some older ones, don't realize that, yeah, it looks cool in the magazine, but there's also a warranty claim that's going to be happening too if you're not doing things right. So watch what you're doing. But what I do with when I design and build my rods is I think of how do I want this to fish? How do I want this to look? When I cast this rod, I'll be able to do I'll throw all 80 feet in 4 strokes, 4 forward strokes,
Yeah.
and you're done. And that's something we've really I've had some help dialing that in, and I'll say in the last probably 5-6 years we've got it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I'll vouch for that. The first time I casted that 6 weight with an 8 weight line on it, because I just had what I had, so I didn't have a 6 weight, I guess is it a 9 foot? I'm having a hard time.
it's a 9.6.
It's a 9.6. There we go. So yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I'm no guru with lines, but a 9 foot, you usually put the right size line. But if you're up towards a 10 foot rod, you can go up a line size within reason.
Yeah, and that rod's heavy enough in the butt. You can go up to almost.
And that's
It'll
the
handle.
first thing I noticed when I was casting it, because we obviously talked about the extra guides on it. I cast it out basically my whole fly line, maybe like 2 wraps on my reel left, and I had never done that before. I can do it with my Berkheimer a little bit, but not as easily as with yours. So casting that rod,
We won't tell Carrie.
we won't tell Carrie. Yeah,
Carrie's a good
he
guy.
doesn't listen to my little Dead Drifters podcast. He's too big.
You should have him on though. He would love to do it. I bet.
I would love to have him on. Yeah,
Carrie's a good dude, man. I'm supposed to have coffee with him here in the next couple days.
nice.
He sent me a.
He builds beautiful rods. I mean, they're the first
Yep.
rod that stuck out, and that made me weak in the knees. Let's say, I was like, because I was always like sage, 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 and then my one buddy was like, "Yeah, but what about Berkheimer?" I was like, "What the shit is Berkheimer? Like, what are you even talking here?" And then he's like, "Try this." It was a 5 weight. It was a dry fly rod, and I cast it, and I was like, "Oh, well, I guess I'll see you he works at the shop." So I was like, "I guess I'll see you there soon." And
I have. My wife gave me some money for my birthday, and I've told you the story, but I love telling it. And she goes, "Go do what you want with it." I go, "I'm going to go get a Berkey." And she goes, "Are you going to buy one or build one?" I go, "What do you think?" So I call up Carrie and said, "Hey, wow, can I come to the shop?" "Oh yeah, come on down." So I bring him a 6-pack of Heffy and Hefeweizen. He loves Hefeweizen beer, and he puts it in the fridge behind his desk. And I'm like, "You're not going to offer me one?" He goes, "Shop's still open." I'm like, "You rat." Anyway, so I said, "Hey, I want a 8'9" 4-weight deep action load, DAL they call it." And he goes, "You want the honey? You want the honey stick?" And I go, "Yeah, I do." And I want a 4 screen. And he made my grip for me, and it was cool. And I built a rod and showed it to him when I was done. I handed it back to him, and he's like, "Dude," he goes, "Yeah."
Mhm.
He goes, "You want a job?"
Nice. Just it was a thought when we were talking about that picture perfect person has their rod straight up and the tips just bent over.
Mhm.
One thing I do with my clients, I have mentioned it before on the podcast, but I feel like it's been a while. When I get someone that's new to fly fishing, one of the first things I go over before we get on the water is I pretend I'm the fish, and I do things and get them to feel the rod in
Mhm.
action. So one of the things I do is I teach people about using the backbone to turn fish.
Mhm.
So what I'll do is I'll get them to hold the line at first. I'll walk back. I'll basically put it up so it's just the tip, let's say, and I'll be like, "Okay, I'm putting a decent amount of force in my arm right now. How does that feel?" And they're like, "Yeah, I can feel it." And I'm like, "Okay, now I'm going to reel up. So now I'm going to use the backbone of the rod."
Mhm.
Then I lift, and right away their arm comes up with me. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to turn the fish. And I pull it over to the side using the backbone, use the backbone on the other side. And they're like, their hands doing the same thing that I'm doing. And I'm like,
Right.
so that was using the backbone. Now I'm just going to go back to the tip section, hold the rod up. And I'm like, here, I'm trying to turn you. Are you turning? And they're like, no. So I'm like, okay, so the rod tip is not utilized for trying to pull fish in. The
Nope.
rod tip there is part of the whole, basically the shock system that is the rod. I don't know if that's the greatest way to say it, but
No, you paid for the whole rod, use the whole rod.
use the whole rod. Um, and then, I always put in a little bit like, okay, and then once they're close to the boat, obviously things get a little bit different. You can't use the backbone when you have a 10-foot rod and the fish is in, 5 feet from the boat. So at that point, you want to put your arm back, still trying to use the rod relatively straight, but pulling him in a sense. And that alone has helped so many of the clients I've had that have never
Yeah.
fly fished before be able to land fish.
Right.
I think it was with David Flaherty. I'm not sure if you know him. I know Ryan knows him, but we were talking about what looks good in photos and stuff like that, or videos of like people spade casting, and he was like, man, I watch so many, because he's a big spade fanatic. So he's like, I watch so many people doing spade casts, and it looks good, but it wasn't actually an efficient cast. They lost so much energy here, whatever.
Right.
So like things that look good in pictures, excuse me, things that look good in pictures don't necessarily mean they're the right way of doing it. So same as you're saying, someone's got their rod straight up and the tip is almost touching the butt end. I, I don't necessarily think that looks cool, but to someone that's never really fly fished, they'd be like, "Oh man, that's,
It's a great picture, great
it's a great
advertisement.
picture." So that being said, don't always trust everything you see, I guess, but knowing your rod, and you're probably going to break a few rods getting to that point because you learn that way, or at least when you got thick skulls like us, it
Mhm.
takes a few you know things broken to really get it through our head that this is how you have to properly do it. When I'm landing big fish, I generally don't carry a net. So like, let's say I'm fighting spring salmon or chum or coho, it's risky business doing it the way I do it, and it's not for everyone. So I won't say that, this is how you should do it. But what I do is I get the fish close to me. The fish is tired out. It's ready to get landed. It's kind of rolling on its side. I know that it's now the optimal time, and I don't want to let the fish rest too long, or else it's going to go on another run and just extend the fight time, which we don't actually want to do when we're fly fishing. We want to get that fish in as quickly as possible. But what I'll do is the second I realize the fish is ready, I rip off a dramatic amount of line in a short period of time. No idea how much that is, but it needs to be about 2 rod lengths more
Mhm.
than. And then last second, all I'll do is I'll let go, pull my hand back, rod pointed behind me basically, and I'll grab the line, bring my rod, put it in between my legs just in case I lose that line. Then my rod's still pointing out the way I want it to.
Yep.
And then I hand bomb the fish in, grab the tail, and Bob's your uncle. We've landed the fish. And most of the time, if I do lose the fly line in trying to scramble for it, rod's back in action, or it was between my legs pointing out towards the water,
Mhm.
grab my rod, I'm still on the fish. I haven't had a huge number of steelhead. I think I counted it about 10 or so. But that's 10 enough fish for me to keep going back every year. Anyways, I haven't lost a steelhead doing it. and I've lost very few coho or spring salmon ever doing that. But I see a lot of people. I mean, let's not drag them up onto the beach. That's numero uno of not what we want to do. Especially people are like, oh, well, they're just going to die for the salmon. It's like, well, if I
Give
don't
us something to do first before they die.
yeah, it's like if that fish is in there to spawn, we need it to go back and spawn. And if you've already caught 20 fish today and you're coming back tomorrow and next weekend and next weekend and next weekend, you need to handle these fish the best you possibly can. Because we want them to spawn. If they don't spawn, they don't come back. Well, they don't.
Right.
They're dead. Their kids don't go. So, yeah, doing it that way was the only way I found. Because, like, trying to land a big fish in a net by yourself, you're going to end up using the rod tip in a way you shouldn't. So I just canceled out the whole rod or the net. I just, like, even when I'm steelheading by myself, I just don't bring a net because, that's part of the fun. Like, ooh, can I land it by hand?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely just, being thoughtful in your every movement, even though you're probably shitting your pants because you got a big fish on. But thinking of the rod,
That's right. Take
that
care of
rod
it.
can be, I can turn a spring salmon on an 8-weight single hand. Mind you, I haven't caught like definitely 20-pound springs I've pulled in, maybe even a little bit heavier with an 8-weight single hand. And my rod's basically pointed at them. It looks like I'm fishing for tarpon or something. It's the rod's so straight. And I'm using the backbone like nobody's business. Another little thing that I do with my reels is like I set the drag so that when I pull hard and fast off pulling line off off the reel, it won't fray up or bird's nest on me, but not hard enough to actually stop these big fish. And then a lot of my reels I'm able to palm. I like that aspect, so I actually will let the fish start to run. And as it's in its run, I'll put hand pressure on it to give it more drag, or maybe my fingers, whatever I feel is necessary. And I slow it down that way. Just because I've had it where I've had a big fish kind of close in and he freaks out, starts running, and I have my drag cranked too high and it just breaks off. So now I go with really low drag. I should probably just get into click and pull reels. It's to the price point that's kept me from them, but that's really what I want to be. That's what I would like to have on my trout setups or my space.
What I use.
Yeah, and they're classy. I would sit there with my pinky up, as I'm casting the whole time because they're just classy. They look good. They sound good.
You're gonna laugh at this. I still use my old school flugers.
Yeah,
Fluger medalist 1400 series.
nice.
I love them. If people make fun of me about it, I don't care. Just holds line.
Totally different subject. My son's grandfather, my wife's grandfather, so great grandfather, I guess.
Yep.
He asked me, he's like, "Hey, I want to give Luca a rod," and I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." He actually, because we talked, and I was like, "I just want him to fly fish. I don't even want him to know there's a spin caster till he's in his teens or something, and then he can go down that route if he wants."
You can make bad decisions on your own.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, when you got your license and can drive yourself places, you can do what you want, son. No, but he was like, "Yeah, I got this 3-piece rod that I used to use back when he was like traveling and in the military and stuff." And he's like, "I'd love to give it to your son." And I was like, "That's super cool." It takes me down there. It's a 3-piece G Lumen. What is
G
it?
Loomis.
Yeah, G Loomis. So it's a 3-piece that, but then he gave me a Mitchell 300. You remember those reels? Yeah, and I have 2 of them already. So now I got 3, and that one is in mint condition. And I'm, not a huge fan of spin casters these days, but obviously they always have their place. No doubt about it.
Just the old Mitchells, man. Those things are bomb proof.
They still make the parts.
Yes, they do.
they still make the springs for their reels that are, I don't know how old the Mitchell 300 is, but it's old. But then the spools, you can change out the spools. I got 8 spools now.
Nice.
And I got, like, one of them is broken. It's a part reel. And then the other one, back when I was spin casting, that's what I used. And boy, is that just such a nice reel. But I kind of, when he gave that to me, or gave that to my son, I was in my head, I was like, you just gave him like a 3-piece rod that was custom made for you back in the day when, that shit was expensive. It's expensive now. And then a Mitchell 300 for my 4-year-old son. So now we have it set up with a really heavy fly in the house, and I just get him to throw it around because I'm
There you
like,
go.
we're never
Those
going to
little
use this on
Loomis,
the water, son.
those little Loomis rods were, back in the day were pretty good stuff. And you talk about Gary Loomis. He's still around. He's 80 now.
Mhm.
His son, Brad, is who makes my blanks.
Okay.
So Patriot Factory is his company, and his dad started Edge North Fork, and Brad went on and did his own thing in 2014, and that's who makes my blanks. And I'll tell you what, man, awesome,
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, that
So
is pretty cool.
I'm very happy with them.
That's a little bit of the history, man. Like, you know, you get into like fishing, you start to find fishing buddies all around and stuff, and then you start to find like, when you really go down and deep into these rabbit holes we call fly fishing, or anything really, I guess. But you know, this guy that's been, these rods you heard about, this is, it all connects in some cool ways. So that's a really cool piece of information. I mean, obviously it was a family business, and it's
Yeah,
still thriving in a new way, but still thriving.
yeah. Loomis sold to Shimano, and
Hmm.
Lama Glass is no longer in Woodland anymore.
Hmm.
It's a little cool thing about Southwest Washington. People don't realize that a lot of the rods that are built, if for industry, are made right up the road, 10 and a half miles from my house. And you have G Loomis, you have Edge, you have Lama Glass, Shimano, Okuma. A lot of those companies are right there in Woodland, and then there's some smaller companies that have their blanks made by these other manufacturers. I mean, there's a it's funny, you talk to some of these executives at North Fork Composites, and I was talking to Alex. He's one of the owners, and they're just sitting there, just standing in the hallway, talking. And he's like, "Yeah," we're kind of getting into new water where we're building not newer water, but we're starting to take on more clients. I guess moonshine rods is going to be starting. The blanks are being made here in America now,
Cool.
which they were made over in Korea, and yeah, they're going to be made by Edge. So it's kind of funny is you look at a lot of these rod companies, and it's just like paper towels. They're all made by three different people, just different label,
Yeah. Well, and
different name,
it
different build.
kind of makes sense because, we're in a niche within a niche within a niche type thing
Right.
where, we're in fishing, but then we're in fly fishing. And then talking to you, we're in rod building.
So how much? What do you think the percentage? A little trivia here. I learned this and it blew my mind. Of the fishing industry, what percentage do you think fly fishing is?
I want
Blow
to
your
say
mind.
I'm going pretty low just
Okay,
because I don't know, but I would say like 15%.
bingo.
Did I?
15%,
Yeah.
15 to 17% of the rods sold in the world, fly rods.
Sorry, what was that last question? I kind of was in my own head space that I got that right.
15 to 17% of the rods sold in the world are fly rods.
Wow. Yeah. So, and then that point, that's just strengthening my point that we, you learned probably on your own quite a bit, but then you eventually started talking to other rod builders and you get information, you bounce stuff back and forth. But there isn't, the same amount of rod builders as there is fly anglers. So you actually, you're condensed down, and it kind of makes sense that they're all in this one area in Washington, basically,
It's crazy.
because
Crazy.
you needed to learn. Hey, come to my house. Let's build a rod together. Now you're hooked. You're like, oh,
Oh boy.
I build rods now, and you know that's one thing I always thought about when I heard how the like fly tying used to be back in like Europe, when people would literally like ride their horses across the country to go to one farm that has this one bird they're looking for
Hmm.
to get these feathers, and then they would like travel back. So it was like, you don't have, like, today we got the internet, but back then it was like all by hand. So a lot, or like learning, through word of mouth where to go, or who to get it from, who has the materials you need, all these things. So, you know, kind of like rod building or anything that's that niche
Hmm.
inside of a niche, thing. You've got these people that obviously want to start building rods like you at one point, and then eventually you start learning other people, uh,
Hmm.
either in your area or online or whatever, depending on the times. And then you guys link up, and next you're like, oh, this is the son of G. Loomis's, or whatever. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool though. I like that because, like you said, you got 5 paper towels and they're all made at, or 3 paper towels and they're all made at the same factory.
There's
A lot
different
of the time
labels.
it is. I mean,
Bread, cars.
yeah,
It's all the same.
Eddie mugs.
Toothpaste, you know. But we talk about this as interests and like I said, in our earlier conversations, if it hadn't been me returning a pair of boots, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you about this
Hmm.
back in 1996.
Yeah, I reminded you that was only 4 years after.
You're only 4 years old, yeah, and I was 20
Reaffirm
something.
that. Get that back.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
making me feel old, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
You're a good
worries.
man.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of funny, like my wife says, she goes, everyone's got a river of energy that flows over your head. Sometimes you just got to be smart enough to grab what's floating by. So, very fortunate. Love what I do. It's not my real job, but hopefully one day it will be. Just waiting for that phone call.
Yeah.
Come run my shop.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we're busy. We're getting ready for season's going to start here. It's January, February, March, April, and then April, end of April, trout kicks off here in actually not here, but in southern central, all over the state of Oregon. That's where I sell a lot of my rods. A lot of my rods go over to Oregon, out of state. Some of my bigger stuff stays locally. But I found a customer base for some reason not in my own state, and that's fine with me. Pretty much word of mouth, a little do an Instagram at Rainwater's Rods, and that's about it. Yeah, I'm going to get a website, but I'm not in a big hurry for it. I mean, I just upgraded my business cards this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got stickers this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. Just kind of have fun with it.
Yeah, and it's, things that progress slowly tend to stick around longer than something that blows up really quick.
Well,
Not to say,
it's my baby, and I tend to, and my wife gets it because she sees that I'm always improving something. And she goes, "Well, what are you going to do now?" I go, "I'm going to replace my drag motors." So, and she goes, "Well, what are you going to get?" I ended up getting a nice, talked to Curtis over a flex coat, and got a real nice 4 rod, 18 heavy duty commercial 4 rod drying system. I'm going to buy another one this year. I bought that 2 years ago, and I said, "Yeah, it's time." I'm just slowly building this up.
Hmm.
So one day I can take that big order
Yeah.
and another big order and another big order. So I have to have 20 rods done and shipped by the end of April.
Beautiful.
So good stuff. I love it.
I'll give yourself a pat on the back, man. That's obviously
That's,
from
that's awesome.
the passion that you have with it. I mean, that's the cool thing that I love of talking to people about fishing. It's so easy, but you see the joy in people's face, whether it's them actually catching a fish or talking about what they make. I mean, I tied my first general practitioner with Ryan the other day, and
Yeah,
he's actually looking pretty good. There's things I could definitely improve on it, but
I'd fish it.
I sent it to like 5 people, like, "Yo, look at this," and they were like,
This is this is cool.
and that's something I love is like, well, and I've said this before as well on the podcast. I recap, I guess, but you can be on the water loving fly fishing. You can be at home tying flies, loving fly fishing. You can just really submerge yourself. I never really, with like spin casting, I didn't go home and set up my power bait on hooks or
No,
set up my floats when I was doing worms under an indicator. Oh, I just did see that. Go over, hey, can you pass me that indicator?
yeah, no kidding.
It's called a float. It's a
We
bob.
call it a bobber.
Yeah, we call it a bobber here.
Red, white, it's a bobber. If you
Yeah,
paint it orange, it's a float.
yeah. It's that's funny. But you can just always be within it, and you have a good friend group going where you can pass information along or fly you tide, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's, man, the depth that you go with it. I mean, you see it in your rods. I felt it in your rod when I cast it. I was like, shit, this man takes care of his craft, and
Appreciate that. Thank you.
wasn't like that first rod or second rod you built that shit wasn't lining up. Talking
No,
about spines of the rod,
sure.
let's go back a little bit on that.
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt you at the time.
No,
So
you're supposed to.
when you get your blanks, they're already cut into the sections you need, or it's not just
Yes.
one long, because one rod comes out of one, like it's one long piece that's
No,
been rolled. No?
no.
Okay. Educate.
Well, okay, so what they'll do is they have them tied. They have them cut into flags. Okay, so all it is the mandrel, the carbon. They keep. Here's a funny thing. I learned this, and I was asking the guys up at. It's kind of cool is um, being going up to Patriot Factory Talon and talking with Jake. He's one of the owners, and Brad. And they're like, "Hey, dude, anytime you want to come in here, just give us a call. That door's always unlocked. Just come in that door." And I'm like, "Okay." So I start poking around, talking to them, and I said, "So tell me about this, and what is this, and what is that?" And they're like, "Everything's cut into flags under mandrel, over mandrel. So the pressure and this flagging, this carbon is very thin, but it has like a glued back. And what happens is they store it at minus like 15 degrees. And once that thing hits zero, it starts to get sticky. So when they roll it really tight and then they bake it. Okay, so you have a butt section mandrel, You have a center section mandrel. You have 3 different sections for your mandrels, right? And that's the core that the rod is rolled on, and that's how they hang it and they bake it. Okay, there's a whole bunch of other things that goes on there, a little scrim and all this other stuff. So the waste product, which I told you originally, I was way wrong. Um, on my blanks, I said, "What's your waste?" They say 2 inches per section, an inch at the tip and an inch at the ferrule. And it's not called cutting; it's called ferruling. So what they'll do is they find that, okay, this is where your ferrules are going to fit together, and then they have a mark. All right, we're going to cut the tip here, and then it's going to be, a 9-foot rod is going to be divided by 4 is going to be like, 29 and a 16th, and they'll cut it 29 and 16th. Find that middle, cut 29 and the 16th. Yes, those fit together, and there's your lengths. And they measure everything out. And then as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, to where your 4-piece 10-foot rods are about 10-foot 6 4-piece is about 34 inches per section. So roughly, and someone's going to say he's wrong. Well, I'm going to use my word roughly in this conversation. So there's a waste. It's not like you think it's one big long piece. It wouldn't fit in the oven. And then what they'll do is they remove everything, and then they sand them, wet sand them to get them
Interesting.
I can't remember if your rod's smooth or not.
I'm gonna touch it.
Touch it.
I'm gonna touch it. I mean, I would say it's pretty smooth.
Yeah, it's sanded.
This out for 1 second, because since we're on, there'll be some video for some folks. This is the rod. So that's
Buckeye Pearl. Yep.
And there's these 3 lines on it that I'm obsessed with. I don't know why. Those 3 dark spots. So that's the tree trying to repair itself or put a blockade. Right?
Pearl. Yeah.
But the real seed is beautiful. And then help me out here, because my brain's drawing a blank.
It's hardware.
The hardware
that comes from Snake Brand, which is made by Limke Concepts down in Roseburg, Oregon.
Mm-hmm. And you might not be able to see the detail, but it basically looks like a rope, or like
it is rope.
Yeah, it has that rope look. It's beautiful. And then right here as well, that rope is there, so it ties in so nice. This was one of the parts that I loved the most, and I really don't know if it's going to be able to be seen, but the gold thread you put in there, just the 2 little lines of gold thread, just makes the rod for me.
I still do that, but I have changed 2 things. One, you do it. That is an early rod. I built that probably a couple years ago. My logo, no, same logo, a little bit smaller. The new one, now we have this. I'll use this one. We now have a double R.
Yeah. So my butt section does not.
You need a new butt cap. Yeah, I think scratched up.
Send it back anyways.
So all of our butt caps now have our. I say our like I'm a big company. It's just me. All
That's the wee thing. Hey, honey, can we clean up here?
Yeah, we need to paint today, hon. It's like, who's we? You got somebody hired? Because I don't paint. So we got a double R here on the black. Yeah, and then I'll show you this. This is really cool. Is I found a guy down here in Vancouver, Washington, Southwest Washington, Vancouver Island, Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah,
it was a French settlement.
Okay,
didn't know that.
Sorry about that.
Fort Vancouver. Yeah. Dang it! Get out here looking for beaver. Didn't have enough beaver.
Hey, we follow that beaver.
We like that beaver there, you know.
There we go. There.
How much wood would your beaver need to eat for
Right.
So yeah,
Right
this is the shiny with the double R.
Yeah.
Trying not to blind everybody. Sorry about that.
Yeah. There. Right there.
There it is. And then
There.
there we go. And then this is our dark, just like you have. This is what it looks like.
And I guess for the people that are just listening, this is like the little, what would we call it? It's just
my logo.
Well, yeah, but it's on the butt section. This is just like the end cap.
This is the butt cap on the hardware.
There you go. There, right there. Nope, down.
Right,
yeah,
right there. There you go.
Clean.
So double R. That's the smoke. We call this dark, as Mike puts it. It's dark.
It's dark.
New color this year for Rainwater's rods is a matte color of gray.
Yeah.
Which I love gray.
Okay.
As you can tell.
Yeah.
Gray and orange are my colors. Yeah, well, that's just dead hair. You can't really see it all that well. There we go.
Right there.
Wow, that's crazy. So the double R again. I want to give I'd like to give a shout out if I could to Sam Porter down at Hot Fabs in Vancouver Engraving. His parent company is called Hot Fabs. He is a laser engraver / pilot for Alaska Airlines, and I found him online. And what a cool dude!
Mm-hmm.
I told him what I'm doing. He's like, I would love to do that. I think that is so cool. And I bring him something. He does my knife blades. I make knives too. I make handles. I don't make knives.
Yeah, you really confused me that one time. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So anyway, let's finish talking about your rod. What do you got?
Well, and then this is the other thing. So we talked to, or you mentioned on the first podcast we did, and I guess now this is in the
episode 35
episode.
Yeah.
You have extra guides on the rod, so it's smoother to cast.
Yes.
One of the first things I noticed that you mentioned to me, but I noticed once I actually was casting the rod, is this guide is about a foot away from my cork. So when I'm casting and I drop it down and I need to grab my line, I only have to move my hand about a foot away from my other hand to grab the line. Whereas every other rod, generally there's either no guides on the butt section, or it's much further away, which has you reaching your hand out to grab your line. So that, if you did nothing special but that would be a selling point for me.
That's kind of my signature.
Yeah,
I caught so much because when I started doing that, I caught so much flack for it until I put the rod in someone's hand and I said, "Now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to foul that up. I want you to loop that around. I want you get that belly in the line and it loops around. I want you to make that loop around. I want you to reach up and have to do a quick cast." And they're like, "Dude, I see why you did that." Dude, it sounded like I was 14. Because I see why you did that. The number one thing that drives me nuts, European rods, and I don't understand why they do this. That first guide is way up here.
Yeah.
And when you're doing this and you're coming down and you're doing your drift, what happens? It goes around your rod. You're like, "Oh man, come on."
Yeah.
Or you hook a fish and you lose the fish because your stuff's wrapped up.
It's true. I
got that idea from watching these guys do competition casting, and I was noticing that they were reaching so much for their to do their strip. Saltwater guys like that extra. They like that extra height so they can get that good hull stroke in. But if you're doing a timed event and you're doing a cast, it's better to have that closer so you're not trying to reach for it. What that does is that's called I call that layout or that build. It's called a performance build. So all of my rods now, I've gone away from a standard build. Everything's a performance build.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I'll like vouch. I have noticed that the line will wrap around the rod a lot less.
yeah,
But one of the big things is, yeah, like this is a streamer rod. So when I'm casting and I'm doing my thing, I'm in the zone and I cast out, assuming all my line goes straight, it's very easy to get to the line. But if I don't make that super long cast and I still have some down at my feet, I'm able to now grab the line and put it in my hand and start ripping back that streamer as fast as possible. There is basically no time lost from the cast and the grab. Like my hands come together, I done my cast, I'm in my line. I'm able to grab it right here because it hangs down on a bit of an angle. I'm already in it. I'm not reaching out over here. I'm not needing to pull my rod back. I can literally, in my first strip, at least for the brown trout on knife system, it's got to be fast. Like he hits the water, start ripping it back.
yeah,
Don't let it sink. You probably have a heavy sinking line anyways to do that job. So yeah, this rod is something that I vouch for every day of my life, just because of how well it's done me. One of the first fish I got on it was coho, and then I got a really nice cutty on it, and since then it's now just laid into some fish, and
good,
it's had nothing but love from me.
good.
Like when you sent it to me, um, obviously I was like, you know, it's almost 2 years ago. I feel, is that how long it's been? No, it's must have been like a year and a bit ago.
No, it's been 2, boss.
Man, time flies. Time
70,
flies when your
70
time
something
flies.
episodes. 70 something episodes ago.
Yeah. It just has so much character. Like the fact that it can go up 2 line sizes, no problem. Um, the way it casts is amazing. The way it plays fish, that tip section is just so sensitive. I don't need to Euro with it, but if I were to, like, it has the sensitivity to do so.
You could do it.
Um,
You could do it.
but when you're actually fighting a fish and your backbone is, it feels like almost half the rod, but then it's still so gentle. It's mind boggling to me because, like, now I've casted many other brands, when I cast um, some sage rods, they feel a bit like a broomstick now because they're just so stiff everywhere,
Yeah,
all the way up to the tip.
all they've changed is it's sad what's happened there.
Well, they've sold the company so many times, so now it's a profit game. They got the name.
They got the name. Their new CEO they was told by the board of directors, and this is a direct quote from somebody that was in the room. It's all about the dollar.
Yeah,
Make us money.
making money.
And to do that, you're not going to be making much here.
No.
So Farbank is basically, this is what we're making money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, there's, and then just the little details on this rod. When I passed it to a few people to cast, and my one friend was like, "Holy shit, this is a heavy rod." I was like, "It's an older blank, so it's not, the lightweight stuff that we're generally used to." But when he casted it, he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I was like, "Well, you kind of got to catch a fish on it to fully understand." And he landed a nice fish on it, and he was like, "Well, damn." And then I passed this rod to um, Paul Morale, which is a guide out in Alberta. If you're looking for a guide in Alberta, little plug for him. He is an awesome individual. I got a guided trip with him, and we chat quite a bit. I put this rod in his hand, and he was pumped right away. He was like, "That's a nice rod." And
there's plenty more where that came from, buddy.
I was like, "That is a nice rod." So, yeah, it to me, if I could just use it all the time, I would, because it's my only rainwater rod.
Well, we got another one coming for you. just like we talked about earlier before, about the bad recording. I do have his little brother, just arrived, and I've got one set aside for you. It's a 10'6", 3/4. It's a combo weight, but it's more towards the 4 weight side. But it's 10'6". I call that my Spring Creek. That is deemed as our Spring Creek blank. But I'm going to build it Euro style for you. You can do anything you want. You can bomb it. It's on a performance. Layout, and you can go streamers. You can go, size 10, 8 buggers streamer. You can go light nymphs. You can go dries. We do everything with it. We cast number 10 black drakes, and then we'll go to number 16 CDC Elker Caddis, all in one shot, and this blank will just perform.
Yeah.
And we do. Oh, I didn't bring. Oh, I did. So what we've done is we found out that we like these. This is tubing, actually, and what it is, it's 3K carbon tubing, and that's my grip. We were making our grips out of this. This weighs nothing. It stays cool in the summer, and it doesn't get cold in the winter because your heat will radiate into it. And that's what we have found out doing our testing for this, and it's pretty cool stuff. So we started. A friend of mine who owns a rod company here in Woodland said, "Leonard, you got to try this." So they gave me a couple of them, and they're made by Patriot Factory as well, and it's actually USAMadeProducts.com is their website, and you can order anything off that website. You can order these actually on that website. You just tell them what length to cut them when you order them. They're relatively cheap. They're $8.
Beauty.
$8, and it weighs like grams. This is amalgamated cork. It weighs ounces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm starting. People are starting to warm up to this a little bit. It's smooth, but when it gets wet, it gets sticky. It doesn't get
yeah.
You won't lose it, and it's got a good feel to it. It's got a nice taper to it. It's 23 millimeters outer diameter, 22 millimeter inner diameter, and it just feels good in your hand. And we found that our customers like it. I use these exclusively for a customer down in Southern Oregon, Yamsey Fly Fishing, another plug for them, YamseyFlyFishing.com. They'll start fishing in April, and they'll shut it down end of October. And we caught some nice fish, 21-inch red sides, rainbows, and I hooked into my first 20-inch brook trout. The thing took me for a run like I've never taken before, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is kind of a new thing. Now, many people poo-poo it, but I love it.
It's like anything. When something's new, you got the people that are still hell bent on the old stuff and
the old cork that you have.
How do you? Because the cork actually has the diameter of the rod, whereas that, sorry, it's not carbon fiber. It's not carbon fiber. That other one.
Yeah, it's carbon fiber. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. That my brain linked it to that. How do you get that on? Since it's such a big hole, so do you have these little like caps that you put on the ends, or like?
No, actually, this. Let's see. So your reel seat, right? So we're going to use the new one. Make sure this is the right one here. Here we go. So the reel seat goes right on, right?
Yeah.
So you got your reel seat, and here's your keeper, you got for your that goes in your blank. So you've got this, and what I do is I put an arbor inside, a graphite arbor, and then I have a winding check butt cap that goes here. Here, I'll just do that. Winding check butt cap goes here, and it's usually like 8.5 millimeters. And then this is 18 millimeters on the outside. So that fits on and fits over the rod snug, so it doesn't vibrate. And then I have it arbored in the middle, and then your reel seat just fits just like that.
Boom, and we just built the rod. See, it's super easy. I don't know what you're talking about. This,
I don't know why. I think everybody should do it. Should be a shop class. We give away gold stars at the end of the class, so everyone gets feels participate. If you had fun, you won, kind of thing.
yeah.
No, but it's easy. It takes me no time. I don't have to ream anything. I don't have cork dust all over the place. It's nice. It's clean. It's cool. And
Well, I'm very excited for that rod.
yeah, you'll see that
and you
you'll
asked
see it into March.
Yeah, March is going to be, and then March is right. Mwah, that's the time where the trout, March is usually like mid-March is when we kind of stop going for steelhead because they spawn in April. So I usually don't go into April fishing for them, but I'll get close to it. And then then it's just dry flies. I probably won't do a ton of Euroing myself, just because at that point I can just do long line and either dries or nymphs that way. And I love people like watching a bobber and indicator. I can get down with that, but it's not for me.
Nope.
I way rather watch my line just twitch and just, was that a rock? Was that a fish? And or fish comes to the surface and
we lead. I lead it. I pull it, put a little tension on it, and pull it through, and you feel that bump downstream set.
I had the privilege of having this older. He was the oldest person I've had on my raft. I don't know if he was 90 or going to be 90.
It's awesome.
And he just wanted no part of the Euro thing. Fair enough. Whatever. Move on. He outfished the Euro guy doing what he did, and I paid attention. I'm sitting there rowing the boat, putting him on fish, and I'm hawk-eyeing what he's doing. And I picked up a few tricks, but really it was just how dedicated he was to paying attention to what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it a little bit, and he was like, I pay attention. A lot of people, when they first get into fly fishing, their heads looking at the trees and stuff, and that's great. Pay attention to the scenery. You're outdoors. It's beautiful. But if you want to get on fish, you got to be. Yeah. I mean, Euro, you don't need to necessarily be watching, but you'll catch more fish if you're paying attention, obviously. But when you're long lining and you just got, a 9 to 16 foot leader, maybe even a 20-foot leader, depending on what fish you're really going for and how spooky they are, you might not notice anything if you're not hawk-eyeing your line and paying attention to the water speed and all these little things. Because and then, like you said, leading the fly a little bit and like having not tension, but like enough that if something bumps it, you feel that. That to me, the first time I ever really got, which was really just a couple years ago. Like, I'm still so new to fly fishing, even though, I've dumped a lot of time into it. When you have just the lightest nymph and you're not even, it's springtime, the fish are coming up to the surface to grab dries and they're willing to move for nymphs and all that. And you're just swinging a little nymph basically, or dead drifting the nymph down the run and it grabs. That is a fun take.
Oh yeah, it is.
I put kind of, I don't know if I would really class one thing over the other, but it's like dry fly eats, streamer eats, long line nymphing. That to me is like top of the run if
The
we're
ultimate.
trout. Then if we're going into bigger fish, I don't care if I'm not going to catch a ton of fish. I want to swing that fly out. I want to go through a run and, give it a little wiggle halfway through the swing, give it a couple of pokes near the end, and then all of a sudden just be like, "Goo, goo, goo," fish on. That to me is like, so, as much as I love Euro, and Euro really leveled me up quite quickly on knowing where fish are, um, especially in your system. If you've never fished a system and you're going out there with, whatever, if you go with Euro, you're probably going to learn a lot in that time that you spend there. And if you spend like quite some time there, you're going to find some nooks and crannies where fish hide that you
Yeah.
very likely might not know unless you're some extreme water reader. Um, so I chalk up a lot of my knowledge that I've learned and fish behavior, and one of the first thoughts that came to mind just saying that was when I got into Euro, and then it was going into spring, and I was right at the bottom with my nymph going through, and I wasn't getting as many fish as one of my friends that was better um, at Euroing than me. And I was like, well, not better. He just had more knowledge.
Mhm.
He's a very good angler all around, anyways. But I mentioned to him, I was like, hey, Zach, like, what are you doing differently, man? And he was like, well, are you fishing the bottom? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, these fish are looking up. They're coming up to the surface. They might not even be fully on the bottom. You might be going under their bellies right now.
Yeah.
And then he was like, just bring up, don't be dead drifting it so deep. And now that it's going up in the water column, there's more movement. So you can wiggle your rod. You can, up and down a little bit here and there, especially if you notice there's a current change. You can drop it or you lift it or whatever. And there we go. I'm catching more fish again.
Yeah.
That one little bit of information. So, that made me realize, like, okay, fish are now moving up. Like, season's changing. I can change my tactic a little bit and I'll catch more fish that way. So, you know, just years of trying, years of getting skunked, and you might get better if you pay attention. Though, pay
Patience.
attention.
Got to have the patience.
Got to have the patience. Yeah, I, when I first started, when I first started to get fish consistently, that's what determined a good day for me. And then as I got better and better, and then when I started guiding, that's when I realized, like, oh, I'm going to be fishing my whole life.
Hmm.
I wasn't in a rush anymore to catch that fish. I wasn't in a rush to, I still obviously like posting a photo of a nice fish and getting those likes or whatever. But
Sure.
honestly, probably 95% of the fish I catch, I don't take a photo of because
Nope.
that isn't the goal.
It's for me. It's not for everybody else.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Steelhead are a little bit different. I want a photo of it.
Oh yeah.
Probably will post it, but
That's work.
that's that's the thing. I wait a year for it, and then I might only get one chance for it, or
Yeah.
get six and not land one. So yeah, I'm taking a damn photo of that fish, and I'm going to show some people. But yeah, it definitely evolves. I have friends that started before me, and I have friends that started after me, and so you can really see the stages of what people go for. Like, I have one good friend, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not really wanting to swing a ton this year. I want to work on some other things." And I was all good. And then he made a joke, and he was like, "I just want to catch fish." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a good point." you know. And he was like, "That's the stage I'm at." And I was like, "That's a very good stage to be at."
Yeah.
I want to catch fish too, but now I'm getting stubborn because we're getting old.
Mm.
I'm younger than you though, so
There you go.
That's
I'll
3
die
times
for a
I've
color.
gone to remind you this episode. That's good.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It keeps me humble.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
putting pops in his place.
You get to that point. I even had a friend who is I work with him, and super solid guy, but he was like, I want to catch steelhead this year. And I was like, oh man, I'm not saying it can't happen, but like you got to put a lot of groundwork in
It's the
with
word.
no fish, and
I
you're
tell you what, I pretty much, yeah, it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's more work than I'm willing to put in.
Mhm.
So I'll just build rods for
Yeah.
those who do it.
There you go.
Ryan, that guy's amazing. He and I fish together quite a bit, and just watching him from not the day he got his first rod, and actually he bought one from me, and yeah, I didn't charge him much for it because we're good friends, and it's just one of my materials back, and he took that rod, and then he just kind of evolved, and watching him, the patience that man has is it's pretty cool to watch. He'll drill a hole until he gets something,
Yeah.
and then he'll keep going and going and going.
That's why his flies turn out pretty damn beautiful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
told him they're too pretty to use, and he got mad at me. I said, "No, you say the same thing about my rods. I say the same thing about your flies."
There you go. Yeah, it's well, one of the big things that, swinging for steelhead, we talked about this. I'm not sure if it was on the air, or I don't know if we were recording at the time or not, but now that I've been using the more traditional flies, um, even though I'm swinging for steelhead, I'm still getting like rainbows and cutthroat from them. And that's because I'm not like, I'm pretty. Last year I hooked 6 and lost them all on traditional flies. So this year I'm like, no, it's happening. I realize that these long shanked flies, um, or hooks, I should say, aren't necessarily top grade for landing fish, because the long shank, they can spit it a little bit easier. There's less, if you just have a little thing. I don't know if that's true. It's just kind of what someone mentioned to me, and I was hurting after 6 lost steelhead, so I accepted it as an answer. Um, but yeah, using these very, classic flies has taught me, one, being very sparse with my material so it can breathe and move. Well, breathe, I mean, like, so it can flutter in the water properly and really come to life. Way easier to cast than, using a giant tube fly. And back when I tied tube flies all the time,
Yeah, it's not throwing like you're throwing a feather duster across the dam.
it's like you're throwing a freaking. Yeah.
Yeah,
So now I'm fishing these, and then I know I'm so basic and not knowing things, but you can get like heavier gauge wire, or wire for the hooks versus a thinner gauge, so you could have the same fly that gets down faster. So, I don't need to put extra weight on per se. I can just tie, a couple in the normal gauge and then a couple in the higher gauge, and I can fish all the different water levels. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty, like I said, I want to get into trout spay this year. That's a big plan. Um, and I just really want to do a lot of wet flies, just those kind of classic looking ones. They don't actually have to be tied classic for me to fish them, but yeah, just super sparse materials, and and very fishy flies that, I can get down if I need to, or do whatever. But yeah, it's been a good year. I haven't actually, I got one bump from what I think probably was a steelhead, one grab. It just was like one big poof. And I
yep.
was like, well, that's not a branch, or more likely not a branch.
I'll
And
take it.
yeah, it felt good. So I was like, I maybe won't count it in my mind, but I'll still talk about it as it was probably a steelhead. And that was on a classic fly. And yeah, I mean, it takes me probably about an hour or more to tie one. So losing them doesn't feel as great as a 20-minute tube fly. Um, but, if you fish every weekend and you sit down and at least 5 days a week, you can tie 5 flies. And if those 5 flies don't work, you just pack up, go home. No,
That's
I
right.
got some other stuff, but yeah, and then the other thing I started doing because I was like, oh, well, the plastic hooks seemed to give me an issue last year. So I was tying them on shanks and putting a trailer hook.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But all my flies now flip upside down because they don't have that heavier or the hook bend pulling it down. So I was talking to a few people, and I also noticed that because I tie my, um, I don't even know what this is called, the trailer hook wire.
Yeah.
It's a rope.
Better
I tie it on the top of the shank.
cut underneath.
Now I'm going to tie it on the bottom, so the
Yeah.
weight of the hook is coming from the bottom of the hook instead of
Yeah.
flipping it.
Just like dumbbell eyes. If you want the fit, if you want
Yeah.
if you want to ride high, put them on top. If you want to ride low, put it on the bottom.
Yeah. And I will probably even go as far as taking a small piece of lead wrap, and just tying that on the bottom. You know, I'm not trying to win any fly tying awards, or I'm sure some classic people might say that's completely wrong to do, but I'm not really worried about that. I want fishability. I want my fly to sit the way I want it to sit, the way that I tied it, and that's it. But yeah, it's a cool little thing, the whole classic and um flies. They just, I don't know, there's something that speaks to me much louder. I always used to look at them and think that, like, oh wow, that's really cool. Some of the more intricate ones that use, $50 feathers,
Nope,
one
don't
feather
do
being,
that.
yeah, that's a little much for me, but
Nope.
yeah,
Argus, I don't need it.
nope.
Even though a match pair is like over $200, but I saw that. I'm like, mm-mm.
Well, I
I
was talking to Jason. I think his last name's Miller. Jason Miller. Yep. And he's an incredible fly tire. And he was talking about, like, there's a set of feathers that, the left and the right, and that one set is $500. I'm like,
yep,
all right, I'm getting a
yep.
new rod before I get a set of feathers for that kind of money.
There's guys that will spend that money just for that match pair. So when they make those wings are dead perfect.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I go, I'm just trying to get a good even coating of of what is this? Is Solares.
Yeah. Yeah. We're simple,
I'm simple. I like it. It works.
I do, and I feel like you probably are in the same kind of thing. Like when I'm tying a fly now, I really don't mind if it takes me a lot of time. I assume same with you when you're building a rod. You're not trying to rush the process. You want to
No,
start from a blank, which for me it's my hook. For you, it's an actual blank rod, and you want to build it up so that everything's as perfect as you know how to do so far, and then your skills only improve. So, or hope improve.
well, yeah. And don't get me wrong. I make mistakes, just like everyone else. If people think that guys building rods don't make mistakes, you're sorely mistaken.
Mhm.
I've gone through and almost got first coat of finish on and realized all my labels run upside down. Or I realized, oh, the thread's not the right color. What did I do wrong? Oh, I used maroon instead of garnet. Or you have a rod, what we call hopping off. It hops off the drying motor and it just sits and it dries and it just drips. I was doing a custom build this last couple days, and it's a 10 weight, The 10 weight is very light, and it's on a 3-piece graphite rod from Italy.
Cool.
And it hopped off for some reason. I don't know what happened. The drying motor just said, "I don't like you," and kicked it off. And I had to cut, and I was done. I mean, complete. And I had to cut it all apart, start over again.
Mm.
As I was doing that, I was throwing up literally in my mouth the whole time as I'm cutting off the guides, off the titanium stripping guides, and cutting all the thread and making sure everything's right, resanding everything. Yeah, making mistakes sucks, but you know what? Never do it again. That's why I'm replacing the drying motor.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's you live, you learn. It's
Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely not rods, but done woodwork projects where I glued something and I put it in a clamp and think it's all good, and I come back and somehow the clamp came off or glued weird and I didn't notice it, and then I'm looking at this thing like, well,
Got a gap in the middle or something.
yeah, something I didn't notice, but a good tradesman does exactly what you do, and you put your pride behind you and you start cutting it back apart or redoing it. And I don't know, that's I guess what sets us apart from people that take shortcuts. But
That's
yeah,
right.
man, I feel like you're probably getting a little tired since I'm getting a little tired as well. We've definitely been on for a couple hours at least.
Yeah, it happens like that.
It
I don't know.
happens.
I don't know why we just don't talk on the phone.
I know. Well, last time we not last time, but a couple of times ago, we ended up talking for like, I swear it was like almost 2 hours just on a phone call. It probably would have been a great episode as well because we talked a lot about
It's
some
all
of
good.
this stuff. But yeah, it's not a hard thing to talk about fishing, especially with
No, no, it's and that's the thing too is I love talking about it. It's part of my life. I wanted to be a game warden when I grew up. Uh, Ended up being working my summer job still, um, and my wife is the one that works for the Department of Wildlife. So it's and it's good, and I love it. It's good for you.
yeah.
It's helped me. I think the quiet, the solitude, the resets everything. Gets you recentered with nature, and if you believe in all this stuff, alignment with the world. And as men, we need to do that. We don't take care of ourselves enough. We take care of others. Sometimes we forget. As I'm learning as I get older, don't be afraid to take care of you.
Hmm.
Take care of your family first. Take care of you though. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning that I don't have to wade as deep as I used to. I don't need to, as I used to, be able to. I used to be able to wade across a certain part of the Truckee River, and it was pretty quick water, and I would just walk across it like it was nothing. But now I wouldn't even do it. No way. I'm smarter than that now.
Yeah.
It's not all testosterone. There's a little wisdom here.
Yeah.
But I think that we all need that. Everyone needs that release, um, just to kind of excuse the expression, just get your shit right. You
Hmm.
know. So
It does me a world of difference. I mean, I can go now some time without fishing, but I was, partying extremely heavily when I was younger. Um, and then I kind of moved away from the city, and drinking and driving was not an option for me. It just never has been. And so that was pretty much off the unless I slept at someone's house, which was, when you get older, you don't really sleep over at people's homes as often as when you're younger. So, that was kind of, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do with my spare time? And I was like, well, I love fishing. I haven't fished in like, haven't really fished in like 5, 10 years, basically, because I was just partying my life away. And then started going fishing power bait and worms and was like loving it. Um, Luckily picked up a fly rod along the way and then just submerged myself into it.
Oh yeah.
And, I've had multiple times in my life where there's been relapses of getting back into partying more than I want to do anything else, or drinking a lot and whatever it may be. And then I always like remember like, no, this isn't where I want to be. And then I backtracked to where it was good, which was me just
Yeah.
being out on the water, having a good time fishing and, enjoying that. And, thank God for the podcast. Thank God for everyone that listens, because they keep me going, keeps me level headed. When I'm not able to go fishing, I get to at least talk to cool people about fishing,
Yeah.
learn a ton. I'm not really a tips and tricks podcast per se.
No.
A lot of them are, but there are plenty of tips and tricks that are brought up throughout this journey. So, yeah, shout out to everyone. Thank you for listening. Leonard Rainwater. We can find you at Rainwater Rods on Instagram.
Rainwater's rods. There's two of us, brother. Rainwater's. Rainwater's rods on Instagram, Facebook. You guys, anybody has any questions, please reach out. And I'm also the guy that'll give you my phone number, and I've done it many times. If you have a question, if you're going to go buy a rod, I don't expect you to buy one from me, but I don't want you to buy a piece of something. I don't want you to buy a regret. So I'll steer you in a direction, but I'll ask you to say, hey, when you're ready to buckle down and get serious, give me a call back.
Yeah.
I've helped a lot of people, and because someone helped me once, more than once, still do. And this is what the community is. We're a community. We help each other. So I don't have anything to hide. Everything I learned was from a book or from somebody else. Information's there. You just got to go look for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but just want to remind everybody, the Northwest Fly Fishing and Fly Tires Expo, March 8th and 9th in Albany, Oregon. Booth 6. Come on by. Say hi.
right on. I wish I could just. I'm on an island and I need a ferry. I wish I could just pop over there. If I was on the mainland, I would be down there.
I told Ryan and I were talking about that. He and I were just talking about you, actually. It was last week. And it's like, why don't you just hop the ferry? We'll pick you up in Port Angeles. It's 3.5 hours.
I know. It's just currency right now. Us Canadians are just getting brutalized by things that we shall not speak of.
No, it's evil.
But I'm trying to keep my head above water these days. Like, I make decent wage and all that. I make a good wage doing what I do. And
you got a family, man. You got to take care of your family. I get it.
I have a pack of hooks. I don't know if I still have it. The same pack of hooks that I just bought today, actually. Today was $16, and when I bought it, it was $12.99. It was actually $16.99, and it used to be $12.99 before COVID. And I was like, "Holy crap!" But yeah, I get groceries. Like,
hey, what's a gallon?
What's groceries? And you got 1.5 bags, and you're like, "What?"
Well, that's the thing too. Is we've noticed down here, and we can say our goodbyes and then keep talking later, but just for everybody, we're all in the same boat. I don't know what it is. I wish everybody would get it together and realize that you're not gonna solve the world's problems by whipping the middle class. Because I tell you what, I can't do anymore.
No.
We have to eat too. Gasoline down here, I don't know what is it per liter up there for you guys.
Right now it's not too bad. It's let's say 50 to 160 a liter, and then
so $3.20 a gallon down here.
But during the summer on this island, it was $2.10 to $2.15. Yeah, it was brutal. Like, I bought a truck when I bought my truck, it was about $110 to fill, and I was totally able to afford that. I wasn't even making I wasn't making the same amount as I'm making now, and then COVID hit. Still had truck payments, $200 to fill up my truck. Need to put at least $100 a week with no going out fishing. So
Yeah.
realistically, like 150 a week if I'm going up to the river. Just yeah. So and now it's 150. I'm like, this is so nice. When I when I go into Alberta, it's like always like 50 to 60 cents less. So like we were paying like 125, it was like 80 cents, 88 cents a liter.
I have an old 2000 Ford F-250 diesel Super Duty, the old 7.3. That's our what we use to pull a horse trailer with. We get hay with. If I'm going fishing for a couple of days, all my junk goes in there. I pack up Mike McCoy or somebody with me, and she's old trusty musty, But when it cost me $175 to fill a 35-gallon tank, she got parked. The batteries are dead. I haven't driven it in probably 8 months.
Mhm.
And it's just, I drive I have a foreign car I drive to work every day, and my wife drives she drives a foreign vehicle too, but still you're getting decent mileage, 30s and 20s, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but our government tells us, what's good for us, and I don't think it's right.
Anyway, without talking about politics, we somehow touched on it a few
Yeah,
times.
you want to talk about money and religion next, and then
Yeah,
we'll really
yeah. Let's do religion. Let's religion for 200. Yeah. Well, Leonard, I appreciate your time. I know we had to do this twice this week, basically, because
It's all right, man. I loved it.
but
We see this show, this recording was not even close to the first. I think this one's better.
you know what? This one was I like this one. This was good. The last one we had some cool topics, but I almost like that was our practice run. We got that out of the way. We came in strong, and
Yeah.
I think we delivered a really good episode. So
Well, Ryan and I were talking. We're going to pick you up in Port Angeles, and when you're ready to come down and fish the rivers with us, we've already got kind of an itinerary to take Mr. Andrew out and about and show him Southwest Washington water.
yeah,
All
okay,
you got to do is just hop the ferry. We'll pick you up.
all right. How much time do you need? 1 to 3 months. How long?
It's all in your schedule and what your family will allow.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so not 3 months. More like less than a week, realistically.
we're going to do it late spring. We'll get the thaw. We'll get the runoff done. Probably
I'll bring you.
We're looking at probably July or September.
We'll bring you maple syrup.
Oh, there you go.
And I'll bring Ryan some jungle cock. Don't tell him, even though he'll hear this, but bring him some jungle cock. That will be payment. Shh. Ryan, stop listening 10 seconds ago.
And we don't like polar bear or anything down here at all. It's albino. Yes, I have a small patch of. Look at that.
That's just all polar bear. I acquired this from an old gentleman who had passed away, so I guess not really from him. I don't know. That's my son actually throwing stuff where it doesn't belong.
So, can you guys have polar bear in Canada?
Yeah,
we can.
We can have seal fur as well.
It is considered. Hold on, that's a taboo. Even though seal fur, we'll talk offline about seal fur. I was given some albino golden retriever, as we call it, died because we can't have that. It's Fish and Game Committee, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They've got that locked down tight. You can't get the good stuff. I've tied some killer steelhead collars and flies or details with seal fur. Oh my gosh, that stuff dubs so nice. Look at that.
Sitting on the desk. Yeah, I would say probably about, I think the person that told me said 80%, if not higher, of the polar bear that we have actually comes from rugs. Just a cool little fact. So it's like people that are looking actively for polar bear rugs. They take that, they cut it up, dye it, and redistribute it. But there's, I know one individual that is connected with one of the bands up north, native band, and they're allowed to hunt one polar bear a year, I think it is. And they don't need the fur. So he gets the fur and does the dyeing process himself. So, anyways, food for thought. Now I know things that I might not bring over.
Yeah, we don't need an international incident
No.
at the ferry terminal in Port Angeles.
Yeah. If we were in Florida, I'd say Florida non-resident Andrew Barney bringing illegal substances down to the US.
What's he smuggling?
What's he smuggling? He's got fur.
Fur.
Well, he's from Canada. Of course he's trying to trade fur.
You beaver loving. You beaver Canadians.
Hey, that's where it started from. That's our bread and butter out here, man. Whenever I'm on a job site and I see a beaver, I run at that guy. All right, buddy. We're obviously getting loopy because it's late, but yeah.
Yeah, it's 11. It's almost 11 o'clock, and
the Rainwater rods, Instagram. There we go. We done did it.
Boom.
Feel successful. All right, Leonard. Well, you have a good night, and we will obviously keep chatting.
All right, bud. Take care.
Cheers.